I was standing in my driveway, staring at an empty space where my Lowboy trailer should have been, when my phone started buzzing with texts from panicked fire departments across California. The morning had started normal enough. I'd gotten up at 5, made coffee, and was planning to hook up the trailer to head down to San Bernardino County, where a wildfire had broken out overnight. My name is Keith Armstrong, and I own a specialized transportation company that moves heavy firefighting equipment throughout the state. When wildfires break out and departments need to relocate fire trucks and heavy apparatus quickly, I'm one of the people they call. The Lowboy trailer that was now missing from my driveway wasn't just any piece of equipment. It was a custom hydraulic Lowboy rated for 80,000 pounds, specifically designed to transport fire trucks, water tankers, and other emergency vehicles to wherever they were needed most. I walked around my property twice, thinking maybe I'd somehow forgotten where I parked it. But no, the trailer was definitely gone. The only thing left behind was a bright orange notice sticker attached to my garage door. I peeled it off and felt my blood pressure spike as I read it. Notice of violation and property seizure. Your commercial trailer has been removed from the premises for violation of Pinecrest Meadows HOA Covenant Section 7.3.2. No commercial vehicles or equipment shall be stored on residential property visible from the street. Your property has been impounded and will be held at Lopez Towing and Storage, 2847 Industrial Way, Sacramento. To retrieve your property, you must pay all fines and storage fees and provide written assurance of compliance with HOA regulations. Signed, Patricia Summers, HOA President. I called Lopez Towing immediately. The guy who answered sounded half asleep. "Yeah, we got a big trailer here. Lady from the HOA called us at 4 in the morning, said it was an emergency removal. 4 in the morning, that trailer is critical emergency equipment. I need it back right now. Can't release it without authorization from the HOA and payment of fees. That's $800 for the tow, plus $100 per day storage. Are you kidding me? I need that trailer to transport fire trucks to an active wildfire zone. Look, man, I don't make the rules. Take it up with your HOA." I hung up and immediately called Patricia Summers. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message explaining the situation, trying to keep my voice level even though I wanted to scream. Then I started calling the fire departments who were expecting me. Sacramento Fire Department's logistics coordinator, Mike Chen, answered on the second ring. "Keith, where are you? We've got 2 engines that need to be in San Bernardino by noon. My trailer's been seized by my HOA. I'm working on getting it back." There was a long pause. "Your HOA took your trailer during fire season. Are they insane? I'm finding that out. I'll call you back as soon as I know more." The next call was worse. CAL Fire Regional Transport Coordinator Jennifer Rodriguez was not happy. "Keith, we have 3 departments counting on you today. The fire's spreading faster than predicted, and we need those units repositioned now." I know. Give me 2 hours. If I can't get this sorted, I'll find you another transporter." "There isn't another transporter available. Everyone's already deployed. You're it." I hung up and immediately drove to Patricia Summers' house. She lived 4 streets over in a sprawling ranch-style home with an immaculate lawn and a decorative fountain in the front yard. I rang the doorbell repeatedly until she finally opened the door. She was in her late 40s, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a cardigan that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Can I help you?" she asked in a tone that suggested she'd rather do anything but. "Patricia, I'm Keith Armstrong from Oakwood Drive. You had my trailer towed this morning." "Oh yes, the commercial vehicle finally dealt with that eyesore. That eyesore is how I transport fire trucks to wildfire zones. I have 3 fire departments waiting for me right now, and there's an active fire in San Bernardino County. She crossed her arms. The HOA covenants are very clear. No commercial vehicles visible from the street. You've been warned twice already. Those warnings were about my truck, which I moved to the back of my property. The trailer was only there because I had an early morning job. It doesn't matter. The rules apply 24/7. If you need to store commercial equipment, rent a facility off-site like everyone else. Patricia, people's homes are burning right now. Fire departments need that trailer to move equipment. Then perhaps you should have thought about that before violating HOA regulations. I have a responsibility to all the homeowners in this community to maintain property values and aesthetic standards. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain some composure. Okay, I'll pay the fines. Whatever they are, I just need the trailer released immediately. She shook her head. It's not that simple. According to our procedures, seized property requires a hearing before the HOA board. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Are you serious right now? Those are the procedures. You can petition for an emergency hearing, but that requires written notice submitted 72 hours in advance. California is on fire and you're talking about 72 hours notice. The rules exist for everyone's benefit, Mr. Armstrong. I didn't create them. I simply enforce them. You called a towing company at 4 in the morning, but you can't make an exception for emergency equipment. The towing was the emergency. Your trailer was a blight on our neighborhood. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a yoga class. She closed the door in my face. I stood there for a moment, genuinely shocked at the level of bureaucratic insanity I was dealing with. Then I got back in my truck and started making calls. First, I called the towing company again and asked to speak to the owner. After some arguing, I got transferred to a guy named Ray Lopez. Mr. Lopez, I'm Keith Armstrong. You're holding my Lowboy trailer. Yeah, the HOA seizure. Look, I sympathize, but I can't release it without their authorization. What if I pay you double your fee right now and take full responsibility? Can't do it. If I release property without proper authorization, I lose my business license. The city takes that stuff seriously. My trailer transports firefighting equipment. There's literally a wildfire burning right now. Ray sighed. That's tough, man, but I've got a business to protect. Take it up with the HOA or get a court order. A court order. That gave me an idea. I called my lawyer, David Brennan, who I'd used when setting up my business. Keith, how's it going? Not great, David. My HOA seized my work trailer and I need it back immediately. Can we get an emergency court order? Maybe. Tell me everything. I explained the situation while driving back home. David listened without interrupting. Okay, here's the problem, he said when I finished. Getting an emergency order requires showing immediate irreparable harm. The fire department's not having your trailer might qualify, but I'd need to file in court, get a judge to hear it, and that's assuming we can even get an emergency hearing scheduled today. How long are we talking, realistically? Tomorrow at the earliest, probably longer. And that's if everything goes perfectly. Tomorrow's too late. The fire's today. The trucks need to move today. Then your best bet is convincing the HOA to release it voluntarily. Maybe get the fire departments to put pressure on them. That wasn't a bad idea. I thanked David and called Mike Chen back at Sacramento Fire. Mike, I need a favor. Can you or someone official call my HOA president and explain why I need that trailer? Absolutely. Give me her number. I provided Patricia's contact information and then called Jennifer at CAL Fire with the same request. Within 20 minutes, both of them called me back. She hung up on me, Mike said, sounding stunned. I explained the situation and she said HOA rules supersede fire department convenience. Jennifer's report was similar. She told me that the fire department's poor planning doesn't constitute an emergency on her part. I couldn't believe it. I've dealt with difficult people before, but this is something else. I sat in my truck, trying to figure out my next move. Then my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Keith Armstrong?" A woman's voice, older, concerned. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Alina Mitchell. I live in your neighborhood on Maple Court. I heard about what Patricia did with your trailer and I wanted to help." "I appreciate that, but I'm not sure what anyone can do at this point." "Well, I used to be on the HOA board before Patricia took over. She's been getting worse and worse with these enforcement actions. Last month she fined the Johnsons $500 because their Christmas lights were up 2 days past the covenant deadline. Most of us are getting fed up. That's frustrating, but right now I need my trailer back." "I know. I'm calling because there's something you should know. Patricia has a personal storage business. She owns a facility called Safe Keep Storage on the east side of Sacramento." "Okay, but how does that help me?" "She's been using HOA violations to force people to rent storage space from her. She'll seize property or threaten fines until people move their boats, RVs, trailers, whatever to storage facilities. Then she happens to have a facility available and gets them to sign contracts. She's been doing it for over a year." Now that was interesting. That sounds like a serious conflict of interest. It's more than that. It's using her HOA position to directly benefit her business. I've been documenting cases, but I haven't had enough evidence to bring to the broader homeowner community. Your situation might be the tipping point we need. "Alina, I appreciate this information and I definitely want to explore it further, but right now I have an immediate crisis. Wildfire season doesn't wait for HOA politics." "I understand. Let me make some calls. There are enough people fed up with Patricia that we might be able to force an emergency board meeting. Give me an hour." She hung up and I sat there, watching the clock tick. Every minute that passed was a minute that fire departments were scrambling to find alternatives. That equipment wasn't getting where it needed to be. That firefighters were working with inadequate resources. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer at CAL Fire. "Keith, we found another transporter, but he's coming from Nevada. ETA 4 hours minimum. This is going to set everything back significantly." I texted back an apology and then decided to take a different approach. I called the Sacramento Bee, the local newspaper. "Newsroom, this is Rachel speaking." "Hi, Rachel. I have a story you might be interested in. A local HOA seized emergency firefighting transport equipment during an active wildfire, and the equipment is now sitting in an impound lot instead of being used to move fire trucks." "Hold on, let me transfer you to someone." A minute later, a reporter named Tom Walsh picked up. I explained the entire situation, including the information Alina had shared about Patricia's storage business. "That's quite a story," Tom said. "Let me make some calls and verify a few things." "Can I call you back?" "Sure, but please hurry. Time is critical." While I waited, I drove back to Lopez Towing to see the trailer in person. When I arrived, it was sitting in the back of the impound lot, clearly visible from the street. My beautiful custom Lowboy, which should have been hauling fire trucks, was instead sitting useless behind a chain-link fence. Ray Lopez came out of the office. "You back again? Just wanted to see it. Make sure it's not damaged. We handle everything carefully. But look, between you and me, this whole thing is ridiculous. I didn't know what the trailer was for when I picked it up. The HOA lady just said it was a commercial vehicle violation. Did she specifically request you as the towing company?" "Yeah, actually." She's used us for other HOA seizures before. Usually works out fine, but this feels different. I thanked him and sat in my truck in the parking lot, making notes of everything. Alina called back 20 minutes later. Keith, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is I got 5 board members to agree to an emergency meeting. We have enough for a quorum. That's great. When? Tonight at 7. That's the bad news. It was the earliest everyone could make it. I looked at my watch. It was already 11 in the morning. That's 8 hours from now. I'm sorry. It was the best I could do. But here's the thing. If we can get the board to vote to release your trailer, that overrides Patricia's authority. She might be president, but she can't overrule a full board vote. Will Patricia be there? Oh, she'll be there, and she won't be happy. But I've been talking to people all morning, and I think we have enough votes to override her. It wasn't ideal, but it was something. I thanked Alina, and then spent the afternoon coordinating with fire departments, explaining the delay, and doing everything I could to help them find alternatives. The Nevada transporter Jennifer found was running late, which meant the equipment repositioning was now pushed back until evening at the earliest. Around 3, Tom Walsh from the Sacramento Bee called back. Keith, I've been digging into this. Patricia Summers does indeed own Safe Keep Storage, and I found 4 other homeowners in your HOA who had property seized and then rented space from her facility. That's a pretty clear pattern. Are you going to run a story? I want to, but I need to verify a few more things. Can you send me copies of the seizure notice and any other documentation you have? I photographed everything and emailed it to him, along with contact information for Mike Chen and Jennifer Rodriguez, so he could verify the Wildfire transport angle. At 6:30, I drove to the HOA meeting location, which was held at the Pinecrest Meadows Community Center. Alina was already there, along with about a dozen other homeowners. Patricia arrived exactly at 7, looking irritated. This meeting was called with highly irregular notice, she said immediately. Alina stood up. The bylaws allow for emergency meetings with same-day notice if 5 board members agree it's necessary. We have 6 board members present, which is more than enough for quorum. And what exactly is the emergency? Keith Armstrong's seized property is preventing emergency response to an active wildfire. That seems pretty emergency to me. Patricia's expression tightened. Mr. Armstrong violated clearly stated covenants. The fact that his business is inconvenienced doesn't constitute an HOA emergency. A board member named Robert Chen, who owned a construction business, spoke up. Patricia, his trailer transports fire trucks to wildfires. That's not a business inconvenience, that's a public safety issue. The fire department has other resources, Patricia said dismissively. Actually, they don't, I interjected. I've been working with CAL Fire and multiple local departments all day. They had to bring in a transporter from Nevada who won't arrive until tomorrow. The equipment they needed moved today is still sitting in depots, unavailable to firefighters working the San Bernardino fire. Another board member, Lisa Torres, looked shocked. People could die because of this. That's overly dramatic, Patricia said. The fire department has plenty of resources. Have you ever actually talked to firefighters about wildfire logistics? Robert asked. I have. My brother-in-law is a CAL fire captain. Moving heavy equipment quickly is absolutely critical during wildfire response. Patricia's face was getting red. The covenants exist for a reason. Property values, neighborhood aesthetics, these things matter to everyone here. Alina stood again. Patricia, I'd like to make a motion. I move that we immediately authorize the release of Keith Armstrong's trailer and reimburse him for all towing and storage fees. given the emergency nature of his work. "I second that motion," Robert said immediately. Patricia glared at both of them. "This sets a terrible precedent. If we make exceptions for one person's commercial vehicle, everyone will want exceptions." "Keith's situation is unique," Lisa said. "How many people in this neighborhood transport emergency firefighting equipment?" "The principle is the same," Patricia insisted. "I disagree," Alina said. "And I'd like to call for a vote." We went around the room. 6 board members voted to release the trailer and reimburse my fees. Patricia was the only vote against. Her face was practically purple with rage. "Fine," she spat. "But I'm filing a formal complaint with the HOA's legal counsel about this proceeding. This meeting was improperly called and this decision can be challenged." "Challenge away," Alina said calmly. "The vote stands." "Keith, I'll draft the release authorization tonight and have it to the towing company first thing in the morning." "Can you email it tonight?" I asked. "The sooner they have it, the sooner I can get back to work." "I'll do it within the hour." Patricia stormed out of the meeting without another word. The other board members came over to apologize and ask questions about what I actually did for work. I explained the specialized nature of fire equipment transport and how critical it was during fire season. "I had no idea we had someone doing such important work right in our neighborhood," Lisa said. "Patricia made it sound like you were running an illegal trucking operation or something." "I have all the proper licenses and insurance. My business is completely legitimate. I just happen to work in emergency services." Alina pulled me aside as the meeting broke up. "Keith, I want you to know that several of us are planning to call for Patricia's removal as HOA president. What she did today was unconscionable, and the storage business conflict of interest is grounds for removal under our bylaws." "I appreciate that, Alina, but right now I just need to get my trailer and get back to work." "I understand. I'll send that authorization within the hour." True to her word, Alina emailed me a copy of the release authorization at 8:30. I forwarded it immediately to Lopez Towing and called Ray Lopez. "I got the authorization," he said. "You can pick it up first thing tomorrow. We open at 7. Any chance I can get it tonight?" "My yard crew is gone for the day. Best I can do is 7 tomorrow." It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. I called Mike Chen and Jennifer Rodriguez to update them. Both were relieved but frustrated by the delay. "At least it's resolved," Jennifer said. "But Keith, you need to do something about your HOA situation. We can't have emergency equipment getting seized during fire season." "Trust me, I'm working on it." That night, I barely slept. I was up at 5:30 and at Lopez Towing by 6:45, waiting in the parking lot. Ray opened the gate at 7 and had me sign some paperwork. "No charge," he said. "Your HOA is covering the fees per their authorization." "Thanks, Ray, and sorry for the hassle." "Hey man, not your fault. Glad it worked out." I hooked up the trailer to my truck and immediately headed south. I had a busy day ahead, making up for lost time. The San Bernardino fire was still burning, and departments needed equipment moved all over the state. But the HOA situation wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 3 days later, I got a call from Tom Walsh at the Sacramento Bee. "Keith, I wanted to let you know I'm running the story tomorrow, front page of the Metro section. I interviewed multiple homeowners about Patricia's storage business, confirmed the seizure details, and got comments from CAL Fire about the impact on wildfire response." "What did CAL Fire say?" Jennifer Rodriguez went on record saying that the delay in equipment transport directly impacted firefighting operations, and that your services are considered critical infrastructure during fire season. She was pretty blunt about HOA overreach endangering public safety. The story ran the next morning with the headline HOA seizes emergency equipment during wildfire, raising questions about board president's business interests. It was thorough, detailed, and absolutely damning for Patricia Summers. My phone started ringing immediately. Local TV news wanted interviews. Other newspapers picked up the story. By midday, it had spread to state-level media outlets. At 2 in the afternoon, I got a call from an attorney named Margaret Vance. "Mr. Armstrong, I represent the Pinecrest Meadows HOA. I've been reviewing the situation regarding your trailer seizure, and I need to inform you that Patricia Summers's actions were not authorized by the board and may constitute a violation of her fiduciary duties. I'm aware. I was at the emergency board meeting." "Yes, I've reviewed the meeting minutes. I want you to know that the board is taking this very seriously. Miss Summers's conflict of interest regarding her storage business was not previously disclosed to the board or the HOA membership, which is a serious breach. What happens now? There will be a special meeting to address Miss Summers's position as president. In the meantime, I want to personally assure you that there will be no further interference with your business operations. I appreciate that." 2 days later, another emergency HOA meeting was called. This time, over 50 homeowners showed up. Patricia tried to defend her actions, arguing that she was just enforcing the covenants as written. Eleanor stood up with a thick folder. "I've documented 13 separate incidents over the past 18 months where Patricia seized or threatened to seize property from homeowners. And in 11 of those cases, the homeowners subsequently rented storage space from her facility. That's not covenant enforcement. That's using HOA authority for personal profit." The room erupted in angry voices. People who'd been afraid to speak up before were now sharing their own experiences. One man said he'd paid nearly $3,000 in storage fees after Patricia threatened daily fines for his boat. A woman talked about being forced to move her RV to Patricia's facility or face escalating penalties. Robert Chen made a motion to remove Patricia as HOA president immediately. It passed by overwhelming voice vote. Patricia tried to argue that the vote was invalid, but Margaret Vance, the HOA attorney, confirmed it was properly conducted under the bylaws. "I'm also recommending that the board consider filing a civil suit against Miss Summers for breach of fiduciary duty and recovery of any fees improperly collected," Margaret added. Patricia looked like she wanted to argue but seemed to realize she was completely outnumbered. She grabbed her papers and left, slamming the door behind her. Eleanor was elected as the new HOA president that night. One of her first acts was to propose new guidelines that specifically exempted emergency service vehicles and equipment from commercial vehicle restrictions. "We should be proud to have someone in our community doing such important work," she said, looking at me, "not punishing them for it." The motion passed unanimously, but the story still wasn't quite finished. A week later, I got a call from a detective named Sarah Morrison with the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office. "Mr. Armstrong, I'm calling about Patricia Summers and the HOA situation. We've received complaints from multiple homeowners about potential extortion and abuse of authority. Would you be willing to provide a statement?" "Absolutely." I met with Detective Morrison the next day and provided a detailed account of everything that had happened. She was particularly interested in the timeline of the seizure and Patricia's refusal to release the trailer despite knowing its purpose. "The issue is whether she knowingly interfered with emergency services," Detective Morrison explained. "If she understood that the trailer was used for wildfire response and still refused to release it, that could potentially rise to the level of criminal interference." "She knew," I said. I told her directly, and fire department officials called her to explain the situation. That's helpful. We're also looking at the storage business angle. If she was using her HOA position to coerce people into renting from her facility, that's potentially extortion or fraud. Over the next few weeks, Detective Morrison interviewed multiple homeowners and reviewed HOA records. The investigation revealed that Patricia had generated over $40,000 in storage rental income from homeowners she'd threatened or fined through her HOA authority. 2 months after my trailer was seized, Patricia Summers was arrested and charged with extortion, abuse of authority, and interference with emergency services. The news coverage was extensive. My story became the centerpiece of the case because it was the most dramatic and had the clearest evidence of harm. The trial took place 6 months later. I testified about the seizure, the refusal to release despite the wildfire emergency, and the impact on firefighting operations. Jennifer Rodriguez from CAL Fire testified about how the equipment delay affected response operations. Other homeowners testified about being pressured into renting storage from Patricia's facility. Patricia's defense argued that she was simply enforcing HOA rules and that her storage business was a separate matter. But the prosecution presented email evidence showing that Patricia had specifically targeted homeowners with boats, RVs, and trailers, knowing they'd need storage solutions. The jury deliberated for 2 days before returning a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Patricia was sentenced to 18 months in prison, 3 years probation, and ordered to pay restitution to the HOA and affected homeowners. Her storage business was sold to pay the restitution claims. The case became something of a landmark in HOA law. The California legislature even passed a bill the following year, specifically addressing HOA authority over emergency service equipment and vehicles. It was informally called the Armstrong Act by the legislators who sponsored it, though the official name was more bureaucratic. The new law explicitly prohibited HOAs from restricting vehicles or equipment used in emergency services, firefighting, or disaster response. It also required HOA board members to disclose any business interests that could create conflicts with their duties, and established criminal penalties for using HOA authority for personal financial gain. Alina turned out to be an excellent HOA president. She reformed the covenant enforcement process to focus on genuine neighborhood concerns rather than technical violations. She also established an emergency services appreciation program that highlighted residents who worked in critical public safety roles. "We should be supporting people like you," she told me at a neighborhood barbecue, "not making your life harder." My business actually grew after all the publicity. Fire departments across California and neighboring states started reaching out, knowing I was reliable and committed to emergency response. I hired 2 additional drivers and bought a second Lowboy trailer to handle the increased demand. I even got calls from other specialized transporters who'd had similar issues with their HOAs. I shared my experience and connected them with Margaret Vance, the attorney who'd helped navigate the legal aspects of my case. She ended up developing a specialty in HOA law, particularly around commercial vehicle restrictions and emergency services exceptions. One day, about a year after everything happened, I was loading a fire truck onto my trailer when Mike Chen from Sacramento Fire drove up. "Keith, got a minute?" "Sure, what's up?" "I wanted to thank you personally. What you went through, standing up to that HOA situation, it's made things better for all of us. We don't have to worry about equipment transport getting tangled up in neighborhood politics anymore." "I appreciate that, Mike." Though honestly, I was just trying to do my job. That's exactly the point. You should be able to do your job, especially when it's as important as this. Anyway, I also wanted to let you know that Wildfire is putting together an appreciation award for you. First Responder Support category. Ceremony is next month. I was genuinely touched. That's not necessary. Maybe not necessary, but deserved. You took a stand when it mattered. The award ceremony was nice. They gave me a plaque, and Jennifer Rodriguez gave a speech about the importance of the entire emergency response ecosystem. Not just the people on the front lines, but everyone who supported operations. I got to meet firefighters who'd used equipment I'd transported, and hearing their stories reminded me why I did this work in the first place. But the moment that really stuck with me came a few weeks later. I was at a gas station, filling up my truck, when an older woman approached me. "Excuse me, are you Keith Armstrong?" I was immediately wary, wondering if this was another HOA issue. "Yes, I live in Redding. My house was threatened by a wildfire last year." The firefighters who saved it were using equipment that had been transported to our area the day before the fire started. "I read in the newspaper that you were the one who moved that equipment. I just wanted to say thank you." She shook my hand, got back in her car, and drove away before I could really respond. But that brief interaction meant more to me than any award or news coverage. That's what the work was really about. Not the HOA drama or the legal battles or the publicity. It was about being part of the system that helped protect people and property when wildfires threatened. It was about being someone that firefighters could count on to get equipment where it needed to be, when it needed to be there. The HOA drama did have one lasting positive effect beyond the legal reforms. It made me much more aware of the regulatory and bureaucratic obstacles that could interfere with emergency response. I started working with other emergency services contractors to form an industry association focused on protecting critical infrastructure from excessive regulation. We lobbied for reasonable exemptions for emergency vehicles, educated HOAs about the services their residents might be providing, and created a rapid response legal network for when issues did arise. It wasn't glamorous work, but it helped prevent other people from going through what I'd experienced. Alina and I became good friends. She was term limited out of the HOA presidency after 4 years, but she transformed the organization. It was now focused on genuine community building rather than rigid rule enforcement. She established programs for neighborhood emergency preparedness, worked with local fire departments on defensible space education, and created a volunteer network for helping elderly residents with home maintenance. "You inspired all this, you know," she told me at a neighborhood meeting. "I just wanted my trailer back." Exactly. You stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult and uncertain. That inspired the rest of us to think about what kind of community we wanted to be. As for Patricia, I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she moved to Oregon after completing her prison sentence. I never heard from her directly, and I was fine with that. Some people learn from their mistakes and some don't. Either way, she was no longer in a position to abuse authority over other people. My business continued to grow. Fire seasons were getting longer and more intense, which unfortunately meant more demand for equipment transport. I hired 4 more drivers over the next 2 years and bought 3 additional trailers. We became the go-to contractor for heavy fire equipment transport throughout California and into Nevada and Oregon. I moved out of Pinecrest Meadows eventually, not because of lingering HOA issues, but because I needed more space for my expanding business. I bought a property on the outskirts of Sacramento with enough land for proper equipment storage and maintenance facilities. No HOA, just county regulations which were much more reasonable about commercial operations. But I stayed in touch with Alina and several other neighbors from Pinecrest Meadows. They'd shown up for me when it mattered, and that created bonds that lasted beyond just living in the same neighborhood. The story did make me somewhat locally famous, which was occasionally awkward. People would recognize me at restaurants or stores and want to talk about the HOA case. Most were supportive, sharing their own HOA horror stories. A few thought I'd been overreacting, that I should have just followed the rules like everyone else. To those people, I always asked the same question. What if your house was on fire and the fire truck that could have saved it was stuck in an impound lot because of an HOA violation? That usually ended the conversation. The most satisfying moment came about 3 years after the initial incident. I was transporting a fleet of fire engines to a staging area for a massive wildfire in Northern California. It was one of the largest fire equipment movements I'd ever coordinated, requiring multiple trailers and drivers working in careful sequence. As I was securing the last engine, a CAL Fire Battalion chief came over to thank me. "Armstrong, right? You're the guy who had that whole thing with the HOA." "That's me." "Well, I want you to know something. The legislation that came out of your case, it's helped us in ways you probably don't even realize. We've got volunteers and contractors all over the state who were getting hassled by HOAs and local regulations. Now, there's clear legal protection for emergency services equipment. That's made it easier to recruit people and position resources where we need them. I'm glad something good came out of it. More than just something good. You probably saved lives, just not in the way most people do. The equipment gets where it needs to be faster now. That matters." He shook my hand and went back to coordinating the fire response. I stood there for a moment, watching the organized chaos of firefighters and equipment preparing for battle against the wildfire. This was where I belonged, supporting the people who ran toward danger while everyone else ran away. The Lowboy trailer that had caused so much trouble was still in service, now with some additional modifications and upgrades. I'd had a small plaque installed on it that read "In service to those who serve." A reminder of what the work was really about. Looking back, I could have handled things differently. Maybe I could have rented off-site storage from the beginning, avoided the whole confrontation. But then, Patricia would have continued abusing her authority. Other people would have continued being victimized, and the legal protections for emergency services would never have been established. Sometimes you have to stand up and fight, even when it's inconvenient and uncertain. Sometimes doing the right thing means conflict and difficulty, but it's still worth doing. The wildfires kept coming, year after year. Each season seemed worse than the last. Climate change was making fire season longer and more intense. But each season, my team was there, transporting the equipment that firefighters needed to protect communities and save lives. We worked through smoke and heat, navigating closed roads and evacuation zones, coordinating with multiple agencies and departments. It was exhausting, stressful work. But every time I hooked up that trailer and headed toward a fire zone, I knew I was doing something that mattered, and not a single HOA was going to stop me from doing it. The story of the seized trailer became something of a legend in emergency services circles. New contractors would hear about it during industry meetings. Fire department coordinators would reference it when dealing with local regulations. It became shorthand for the kind of bureaucratic absurdity that could interfere with critical services if people didn't push back. I gave talks occasionally at emergency services conferences, not about the drama, but about the importance of protecting operational flexibility during crisis response. The HOA story was always part of it, but the real message was about maintaining focus on mission-critical work, regardless of obstacles. There will always be someone who doesn't understand what you do or why it matters, I tell audiences. Your job is to stay focused on the mission and fight for the resources and flexibility you need to accomplish it. Don't let bureaucracy become an excuse for failure. It resonated with people because everyone in emergency services had dealt with similar frustrations. Maybe not HOA seizures specifically, but regulatory obstacles, budget constraints, administrative hurdles that made their jobs harder. The message was universal. Keep fighting for what matters. Years passed. Fire seasons came and went. My business matured from a scrappy one-man operation to a professional fleet with multiple teams and state-of-the-art equipment. But the core mission never changed. Get firefighting equipment where it needs to be when it needs to be there, no matter what. The Lowboy trailer that started it all was eventually retired after more than a decade of hard service. I kept it rather than selling it, parking it at my facility as a reminder. The orange HOA seizure sticker was long gone, but I had it framed in my office, a memorial to the day everything changed. Eleanor visited occasionally, and we'd sit and talk about how the neighborhood had evolved. Pinecrest Meadows was now known for being welcoming to first responders and emergency services workers. Several firefighters and EMTs had moved into the neighborhood, attracted by the supportive environment. "We should have been like this all along," Eleanor said during one visit, "supporting our neighbors instead of fighting over rules and regulations." "Most people are good," I replied. "They just need someone to show them a different way of thinking. You did that. You stood up when it mattered." I shrugged. I just wanted my trailer back so I could do my job. That's exactly why it mattered. You weren't looking for attention or trying to make a point. You were just trying to do important work. That authenticity is what got people to pay attention. As I write this, looking back on everything that happened, I'm struck by how a simple HOA violation turned into something so much larger. It wasn't planned. I never wanted to be a test case or a public figure. I just wanted to transport fire trucks and support emergency response. But sometimes life puts you in positions where you have to choose. Accept injustice or fight back. Stand up or stay quiet. Do the easy thing or do the right thing. I'm glad I fought back. Not just for myself, but for everyone who came after, everyone who benefited from the legal protections and cultural shifts that resulted. Change is hard and uncomfortable, but it's necessary. The wildfires will keep coming. The summers will keep getting hotter and drier. And as long as firefighters need equipment moved to protect lives and property, I'll be there with my trailers and my team, doing the work that matters. No HOA will ever seize my equipment again. But more importantly, no HOA can seize anyone's emergency services equipment without serious legal consequences. That's a legacy worth fighting for. And every time I hook up a trailer and head toward a fire zone, I think about that morning when I walked out to find an empty driveway and an orange sticker. I think about Patricia Summers's dismissive attitude, about Eleanor's courage in organizing the board vote, about all the people who stood up when it mattered. I think about the woman at the gas station whose house was saved by equipment I transported. That's what makes all the hassle worthwhile. That's why the work matters. The Lowboy trailer sits in my driveway now at my new property, loaded with a fire engine heading to a training exercise in Fresno. In a few hours, I'll hit the road again, doing what I do best, supporting the people who protect our communities. Being a small but essential part of the emergency response system. And if anyone ever tries to interfere with that mission again, well, I know how to fight that battle now. I know the laws, the procedures, the resources available. More importantly, I know there are good people willing to stand up for what's right when it matters most. That knowledge makes all the difference. The equipment moves, the firefighters get what they need, and communities stay protected. That's how it should be. That's how it will stay.